Warning, this video contains copious amounts of LARPing. Viewer discretion is advised. So, I just saw Marvel Civil War last night. I gotta say it was a good movie. I'd highly recommend going to see it. Just a couple technical aspects. They've definitely improved the fight choreography and the pacing of the movie. The fight choreography has always, for me, kind of been an issue in Marvel movies. A lot of the times it's just really short. A lot of times it's just not particularly well done. But especially with like the Winter Soldier, we begin to see a large improvement in the fight choreography. And in this movie, it was great fight choreography, interesting action scenes, just much better. The fight scenes were a lot longer than previous movies, and that was kind of a complaint I had in a lot of them. Particularly the earlier Iron Man movies, was the fight scene lasted like 2 minutes, and you didn't really get any sort of concept of epicness from them. So it was a good movie. It was a lot of fun. I like Superman versus Batman a bit more. I think it had a better story, but action scenes weren't as good. But overall, this is a good film. So, I should note before we start talking about it, I went into this with no preconceived notion as to which side I was part of. For those of you who don't know, and we'll get into this in a second, Civil War was a event in the Marvel Universe, made by, I forget his name, the guy who did Kick-Ass, who did, what was it called again? That gentleman movie with Colin Firth. I forget his name. It's not important. And basically the conflict was, it's a bit different in this, but it was between Iron Man, who wanted to register and deputize all existing metahumans, and Captain America, who was against this. So in concept, it's a very kind of open, difficult question. Because Iron Man's kind of premise is we got people like the Hulk, we got people like Thor, we have people like Jean Grey who can blow the planet up. We need control of these people. The governments of the world need their own metahumans to protect them. People who are too dangerous need to be basically watched, and stuff has to happen so that like Jean Grey can't blow the world in two. So that's a perfectly legitimate goal. On the other hand, Captain America's view is that ultimately what matters more is the individual and the individual's moral compass, and that the government, even if it does employ metahumans, shouldn't basically micromanage all of them. Now, what's interesting is this is a case of the devil's in the details. Theoretically, there's a lot of plus and minuses, but what really kind of clinches it for you is watching the movie or seeing a story where this is put into practice to kind of get an idea of what it really looks like, and it completely changed my opinion. So, let's get into this film. So, the movie starts with Bucky Barnes, aka Winter Soldier, I'll just call him Bucky, assassinating Tony Stark's parents and stealing the super soldier formula. The super soldier formula is used by Hydra to create a team of super assassins who serve as the false antagonist for this film. So this takes place a year after the Avengers Age of Ultron, and we get an opening action scene where Steve Rogers, where Captain, I'll just call him Cap, Widow, and Vulcan and Scarlet Witch have kind of gone together to stop Brock. Brock was that guy in Captain America 2 who is kind of the head of Hydra's assassination team, and he survived, but he's hideously burned and in constant pain. So he's trying to steal a biological weapon from a lab in Lagos. I just like to think of a biological weapon as being a sample of the Ebola, because Nigeria had succeeded actually in getting rid of the Ebola because the government took reasonable measures and quarantined everybody and didn't let any of the people from the areas move around. And that solved the problem because they were able to isolate the people who had the highly contagious virus, which Western countries weren't able to do because of freedom. So they're trying to steal the highly dangerous biological weapon, and Captain America and kind of the renegade Avengers succeed in destroying. They kill the Hydra team, but in the process, it turns out that Brock is a suicide bomber and has massive amounts of high explosives strapped to him. So he blows up, and unfortunately, all they can do is hit him in the air. So they avoid slaughtering the entire market, but they blow up the floor of a building where a number of Wakandan humanitarian workers are. So the international community, in true dildo fashion, and we saw this in Superman versus Batman, where Superman got in trouble for killing members of ISIS, even though he didn't kill them, but the international community is like, you can't just go around killing members of ISIS, they were innocent people. You're acting against international law. Violence doesn't solve anything. So the fact that they stopped a psychotic international terrorist organization from getting their hands on a biological weapon that would kill hundreds of millions of people doesn't matter, because one of those people suicide bombed and blew up a building. How is this the Avengers' fault? It isn't in any conceivable way, but this is the fucking UN, and this is the dildos who run our society. They're like, we can't accept the loss of any innocence, is kind of the theme of the movie. We can't accept moral ambiguity. We can't, no, not even moral ambiguity, because the Avengers are clearly good guys. We can't accept that any sacrifices can be made, etc. And that was kind of a reoccurring theme of Captain America's character. I remember in the second one, they're like, oh, the greatest generation talks about moral responsibility. And Captain America goes, well, we made sacrifices and we compromised, but we kept this country free, and we defeated the commies, and we defeated the Nazis. And that's true. I mean, I think Captain America is a much more kind of realistic view of it. So because of this, and because of Iron Man basically losing his mind, this is kind of where the movie goes into Black Lives Matter, the movie. And this movie is basically Black Lives Matter, the movie. Tony Stark is giving a bunch of grants to MIT graduates, and some black woman's there, and she's like, my kid was a good boy. He didn't do nothing. He was in Mokovia when you dropped that island, and he died. He was there he was going to college, he was getting his life on track. He didn't do nothing. And that's basically like what happens, because apparently, and this is, I can't put enough air quotes around the implausibility of this, he was a good boy. He was getting his life together. He was a computer programmer, and he went to Mokovia to help develop it and to build sustainable housing for the people there. And this is kind of the irony, particularly of liberal blacks, who are, in my view, some of the most fucking dildo people on the planet. I actually really dislike them, not because they're black, but because they've lost all sense of pride in their people. They've lost all sense of kind of their own identity, own sense of uplifting their people, and their entire existence is devoted to trying to emulate white people, and in incorporating the values of swipples who fucking look down on them to more extent than I do. But yeah, so he was there. It's okay for blacks to go to white countries and do condescending aid work, but it's not okay for white people to go to African countries and do condescending aid work, because a lot of people complain about that shit. Which I complain about. I complain about it because I think it's condescending too, a lot of the time. So because that guy died, how exactly it was the Avengers' fault, I don't know. They kind of had to do it because otherwise they were going to destroy the world, but that doesn't matter, because no one can be sacrificed. And that's kind of a theme of Iron Man's position. Nothing can be sacrificed. You never have to choose the lesser of two evils. Either everything's perfect or we aren't going to do anything. So because of Black Lives Matter movement, Iron Man decides we have to put the Avengers and all metahumans under UN control. Not even the American government's control. Because I was actually kind of in favor of S.H.I.E.L.D. Because S.H.I.E.L.D. was at least presumably kind of a patriotic organization in the service of America. But now we can't even do that. We have to have it under control of the fucking UN. The irony of this is, if they were under the control of the UN, it would almost certainly lead to another Shoah. What would happen is the massive number of Muslim countries and countries who hate Israel would vote to send the Avengers to end the apartheid in the West Bank, or whatever you want to call it. And Israel would probably like have its borders torn down by the Avengers, and it would be overrun by Muslims, and there'd be another Shoah. Which is kind of the irony of this film, because it's like we have to deputize the Avengers to prevent another Shoah, but really that's what it's going to lead to, and your mileage may vary. So they're signing the Sokovia Accords, and Iron Man's like, look, all these countries, the UN, say that metahumans have to be controlled, and you're like, well, who the fuck cares? The UN are full of fucking dildos. It's literally like the morally least responsible organization on earth. It's literally composed of just fucking like countries like Sudan and Myanmar and Saudi Arabia and just the most fucking depraved, evil countries on earth. Really, we want to subject metahumans to fucking Sudan? We want to subject them to fucking Pakistan? Are you serious? Because somehow these countries it's more moral to have governments that are engaged in active genocides governing superhumans than the United States. Because people just hate America. And they blame America for their own fucking failings as nations. So they're having a conference at Vienna, which is led by the king of Wakanda, which is some fucking random Central African country that's apparently really advanced. How this happened, I don't know. I think basically what happened is it's the only place on Earth where there's vibranium. And it's kind of like Botswana, where regardless of how poorly the country's run, they have so much money, they can't help but be wealthy. So it's probably kind of like Dubai, where they just kind of build these excessively big, high time preference structures, and once the vibranium runs out, it's going to go back to being fucking like pre-industrial. I don't know, but apparently it's being led by that guy, and then Winter Soldier shows up, or who we think is Winter Soldier shows up, and he blows up the UN buildings, and that kills the African king, and then his son decides to become Black Panther. What's funny is, even though he's Black Panther, he doesn't really share any of the ideologies of the Black Panthers. And I guess this is kind of an interesting thing about me, is I actually have a lot of sympathy for Malcolm X, and I have a lot of respect for Malcolm X. Far more than Martin Luther King Jr. Because I see Malcolm X, and I haven't done too much reading about it, but I see him as someone who wanted to better the black community and wanted them to go their own way and build their own identity, instead of Martin Luther King, who I just view as wanting to whitewash them, to just basically make blacks indistinct from white people. Whereas Malcolm X actually kind of wanted to have their own identity. And from what I saw in like the movie in particular, he was trying to impose discipline on them and kind of moral fiber and kind of necessary controls to try to get them to develop their own social structures, which is kind of because the black family largely fell apart immediately after it and crime rates spiked. But that's neither here nor there. I just kind of bring it up because this comes to another issue. There's this concept that black people equal diversity. We can't have an Indian member of the Avengers. We can't have a Chinese member. We can't even have a Hispanic member. We can just keep throwing black people at it, and that's diversity. I always find these movies funny, or any movie shot in America, because there's never Hispanics in any of them. It's always just black people equal diversity. It's like you go to like fucking California in these movies and everyone's either white or black. There's no Hispanics. Even in states where they show that are majority Hispanic, it just isn't. So let's see here. So there's some guy from Sokovia whose family died in the Avengers incident, who is programming Winter Soldier to go out and kill more people, and that happens, and Captain America is against killing Winter Soldier because he thinks he should be brought in and he thinks he's not responsible. we kind of have a series of things. Iron Man has started to become unhinged because of Black Lives Matter, and he's imprisoned Scarlet Witch. So Signal, who's the all-time fucking worst character in these movies, is keeping her captive at the Avengers compound. Captain America's shield and Vulcan's flight suit are taken away, and they're basically scolded by some fucking dildo Obama's Secretary of State who's like, we can't act unilaterally, you have to stop killing terrorists. If you kill the terrorists, it means they won. This is 2016. And that's kind of like the dildos who are now kind of supposed to govern the world. All I can say is Hail Hydra if that's the alternative. And Captain America's like, look, these guys are full of shit. Ultimately, I think us in general, even if we make mistakes, it's better that we rule ourselves and that we are our own they're their own that we're our own agents, because we kind of know better, and our internal moral compass is more important than these governments run by dildos. And I agree. And I had gone into this actually being a bit in favor of Iron Man's side. But as the movie kind of unfolded, and we just saw how phenomenally weak, unwilling to make difficult decisions, unwilling to protect their people, the various governments of the world were, I became more and more and more in favor of Captain America. And this kind of goes to a theme that I've really been kind of thinking a lot about lately, which is the idea of a caste system. And this is kind of where the LARP comes in. So basically the idea behind the caste system is people are born with certain souls. There's a priestly caste, there's a warrior and ruling class, there's a kind of a merchant, scientific, skilled class, and then there's the peasants. And then beneath that there's the pariahs. So I think kind of what Captain America and the anti-registration metahumans represent is a Kshatriya or warrior caste. Captain America is basically kind of, if we want to LARP, saying we are the warrior elites. We are the people who are born with the ability to make these difficult moral decisions. The world is basically run by plebs now. Plebs who are short-sighted. There's kind of different value sets if we look at the world through a caste system. As I like to say it, the priestly caste asks what is best for the spirit. The warrior caste, what is most efficient and what creates the most prosperity. The pleb asks what gives me the most pleasure and makes me feel good in the short term. And that's kind of what it is. And if you look at TRS, that's what the dildocracy is. The dildocracy is a society based on doing bad, degenerate things that are objectively bad for society and for the individual that make you feel good in the short term. And Captain America is like, we are the warrior caste. We are the people who are by nature and by God selected to make these decisions for the world. Not these assholes who are just fucking petty plebs, who are just trying to do this. And Tony Stark doesn't really want responsibility anymore, so he wants to give it up. So ultimately, we kind of have this divide. We find out that there's this guy who's trying to drive a wedge in the middle of the Avengers because his family died in Sokovia. And he's trying to use a Winter Soldier to do it, so he tells Iron Man that Winter Soldier killed his parents. He kind of orchestrates all of this. So ultimately, the sides in the Civil War are you have Captain America, Falcon, Ant-Man, Hawkeye, and Scarlet Witch on one side, and you have Iron Man, Rhodes, Vision, and Spider-Man on the other side. And basically, the Spider-Man is basically just kind of used. Tony Stark takes advantage of Spider-Man's youth and his hero worship of him to get him to go into a extremely dangerous situation that he doesn't understand. Well, that's good. I mean, that's great. So let's see here. So that stuff happened. Um, and we kind of have a showdown between Captain America and Iron Man. In kind of one of the last Hydra complexes where the guy from Sokovia has gone and killed all the metahumans who were stored there. Because they believed that the plot was like a Hydra loyalist was trying to get to the super assassins and reactivate them and get the super assassins to destroy the world. But really what he wanted was the whole thing was a plot to create division and to split the Avengers in half and to turn the world against metahumans who he viewed as destroying his country and destroying his killing his family. So they have this big epic fight. It's a great fight between Captain America, Winter Soldier, and Iron Man. Captain America succeeds in winning, but Tony Stark, in kind of a petty gesture, yells, "You don't deserve that shield. That shield was made by my father." So Captain America throws it down. And the film ends with Captain America breaking out the other anti-registration Avengers who got captured earlier during this really awesome fight scene at the airport. So he breaks them out of prison. Iron Man kind of realizes that Captain America is his enemy now, but wants him to be free, so he kind of dawdles on his way there to stop them. So the film, one of the problems is there's a part where Rhodes's flight suit fails and he crashes into the ground, and what would have made the movie a lot better is if he had have died, because it would have meant that Captain America and Iron Man are unreconcilable. Instead, he's paralyzed from the waist down, but that appears to be fixed with exoskeletal legs. So, in other words, there's kind of no consequences, and kind of the attempt to have like real drama kind of falls apart. So, what can we kind of make of Civil War? We see Iron Man descending into kind of insanity. He's been doing this for a long time. He's lost Pepper Potts, probably because Gwyneth Paltrow's like, "Fuck, I don't want to be in this movie anymore," and she was always kind of a bad choice. So I'm kind of glad she's gone. We see Captain America develop a spontaneous romance with Peggy Carter's niece, who's kind of a feminist, and I don't know, she's kind of obnoxious. We see a split in the Avengers and kind of setting the stage more and more for Avengers 3, which will probably be the Infinity Gym plotline or whatever the fuck they're doing at the moment. So overall, it's a good movie. I think the film pretty clearly sides with Captain America. But it's kind of hard to not side with Captain America. I mean, unless you're like the biggest fucking slipple on earth, why would you side with the UN? Why would you side with Black Lives Matter? Why would you side with any of these just fucking depraved, pathetic people? So, Captain America form a like warrior caste LARPy alternative to the Avengers called the Kshatriyas. I'd watch that movie. So that's Argent. That's my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you guys later.